The mysterious vanishing. The galaxy was once ruled by an empire, a force so powerful that no one dared to challenge it. For decades, the empire controlled countless worlds, its fleets of ships and armies of soldiers unmatched in strength. At the heart of this mighty empire was the Aegis, a ship so powerful it was called the Guardian of the Stars. Built from the strongest metals and fueled by ancient technology, the Aegis was feared by all. Its cannons could obliterate entire fleets, and its engines could travel faster than light, making it nearly invincible. The Aegis was more than just a ship. It was a symbol of the Empire's dominance, its strength, and its promise of peace. The crew aboard the Aegis was handpicked, elite soldiers, scientists, and commanders who had all pledged their lives to protect the Empire and the people within it. Together, they became the most powerful team in the galaxy, keeping peace through their mere presence. But this peace came at a price, for the Aegis was not a vessel built for diplomacy. It was built for war. Then, one fateful day, the Aegis vanished. It was as though the ship had never existed. One moment, it was orbiting a planet in the outer reaches of the galaxy, and the next, it was gone. There was no warning, no distress signal, nothing. The Aegis simply disappeared. The galaxy's leaders tried to make sense of it, but no one had any answers. Not a single person aboard the Aegis was heard from again. It was as though the ship had been swallowed up by the universe itself. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some believed the Aegis had been destroyed in battle, its mighty cannons turned against it in some cataclysmic event. Others whispered that it had found a way to slip into another dimension, lost forever in a place beyond the reach of time and space. Some said it had been abandoned by its crew, who had grown disillusioned with the empire they served. But no one knew for sure. The empire, shaken by the loss of its most powerful weapon, tried to move on. But the Aegis was irreplaceable. There were many other ships in the fleet, each powerful in its own right, but none with the sheer firepower and influence of the Aegis. It was a ship of legend, and its disappearance left a hole in the heart of the empire. Without the Aegis, the galaxy seemed more fragile, more vulnerable. And as the years passed, the story of the Aegis faded into myth. The ship that had once been a symbol of peace and power became a legend whispered about in the dark corners of the galaxy. Children grew up hearing stories of the Aegis, and those stories spread across planets and star systems. It became the subject of songs and tales, told by those who remembered its glory days. Some believed the Aegis was still out there, waiting to return, but as time passed, fewer and fewer believed this was true. The ship became a forgotten relic, its legacy buried beneath the weight of history. But not everyone forgot. A small, secretive faction, operating in the shadows, kept searching. They believed that the Aegis had not been lost forever, but was hiding in plain sight, waiting to be found. They were a group of former soldiers, scientists, and engineers, all of whom had worked on the Aegis in one way or another. They had heard the whispers, seen the signs, and knew that the ship was out there, somewhere, waiting to be rediscovered. For years, they scoured the galaxy. They followed leads, investigated strange anomalies, and dug through old records in the hopes of finding a clue. The search seemed hopeless at times, but the faction never gave up. They believed in the Aegis, and they believed in its power. And they knew that if they could find it, the fate of the galaxy could be changed forever. One day, their perseverance paid off. A small, obscure signal was detected, coming from a remote corner of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of the Empire's influence. It was weak at first, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The faction jumped into action. They sent out ships to investigate, but none could reach the signal's source. The area was too dangerous, too far out in the galaxy for anyone to navigate safely. But the faction was determined. They gathered a team of brave souls, each willing to risk everything for the chance to find the Aegis and uncover its secrets. The journey would be perilous, but they believed the ship was the key to saving the galaxy. They had no idea what awaited them, But they knew one thing. The Aegis was out there, and they were going to find it. As they set off into the unknown, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The crew didn't know it yet, but their journey would bring them face to face with the greatest weapon the universe had ever known. The Aegis had been forgotten by many, but it was about to make its return, and with it, a new chapter in the galaxy's history would begin. A glimpse of the past. As the team ventured deeper into the unknown, the memories of the Aegis were still fresh in the minds of the few who remembered its glory. Among them was Captain Joran, a former officer of the Aegis, who had served aboard the ship during its prime. He knew its history better than anyone else, and the story of its disappearance haunted him. Every night, as the ship they traveled on moved farther from known space, Captain Joran would sit in the command room, staring at old holo-records of the Aegis, reminiscing about the ship's glory days. The Aegis had not always been a weapon of war. When it was first built, it was designed as a vessel of peace, an exploration ship meant to unite distant planets and bring prosperity to the galaxy. Its advanced technology allowed it to travel where no other ship could, pushing the boundaries of space itself. But the galaxy was not at peace, and soon, the Aegis was forced to take on a new role. The crew of the Aegis, a diverse group of humans, aliens, and artificial intelligence, became the backbone of the Empire's military. The ship's technology was enhanced, its weapon systems upgraded, and its mission evolved. As the Aegis became more powerful, so did its reputation. Entire fleets of enemy ships had been obliterated by its mighty cannons. The crew aboard the Aegis was celebrated as heroes. They were the guardians of the galaxy, the final line of defense against invaders. Captain Joran often remembered the day when the Aegis encountered its greatest threat. The enemy fleet was unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. They were a race of ruthless aliens from a distant part of space, known as the Jira. Their ships were unlike anything the Aegis had ever fought, their technology far more advanced than anything the Empire had. The Jira had no mercy, and they showed no fear. The battle was fierce. The Aegis fought bravely, its weapons firing non-stop, but the Jira's ships were relentless. Their attacks breached the Aegis's shields, forcing the crew into desperate measures. For the first time, the mighty Aegis was pushed to the edge. The crew fought with everything they had, but despite their strength, they couldn't stop the Jira fleet from advancing. Captain Joran recalled the final moments of that battle. The Aegis was cornered. The ship's engines were failing, and its cannons had all but run dry. The Jira were preparing to deliver the final blow. But in a last-ditch effort, the ship's chief engineer, Dr. Lyra, activated a secret weapon hidden deep within the ship's core. It was a technology so ancient and dangerous that no one truly understood its full power. The weapon, called the Heart of the Aegis, was a mysterious energy source discovered during the early days of the ship's construction. It was believed to be a remnant of an ancient civilization that had once ruled the galaxy. No one knew how it worked, only that it had the potential to wipe out entire fleets in a single burst. But the heart was unstable, and using it was dangerous. Dr. Lyra's decision to activate the heart was a desperate one, but it worked. A massive shockwave of energy erupted from the Aegis, obliterating the Jira fleet in an instant. The shockwave was so powerful that it sent ripples through space itself. But the cost was immense. The Aegis was damaged beyond repair, and the crew knew they could not survive the aftermath. The heart of the Aegis was deactivated, but the ship was too damaged to continue its mission. The crew was forced to make a difficult decision. They could either abandon the Aegis and try to make their way back home, or they could stay and attempt to repair the ship, risking their lives in the process. Captain Joran and his crew chose to stay. They believed that the Aegis was too important to abandon, that it could still serve as the protector of the galaxy. But in doing so, they became trapped in a void, a place where the ship's damaged engines could not take them anywhere. The Aegis disappeared, and with it, the crew vanished from the galaxy's history. They had gone silent, leaving no trace of their fate behind. As the team continued their journey toward the distant signal, Captain Joran's memories were a constant reminder of what had been lost. The Aegis was more than just a ship to him. It was a legacy, a symbol of the Empire's strength, and the sacrifice of those who served aboard it. The ship's disappearance was not just a mystery. It was a wound that had never fully healed. And now, as they neared the source of the signal, the team was about to uncover something that no one had expected. The Aegis was out there, waiting to be found. But what would they discover when they reached it? Would the ship still hold the power it once did? And what secrets had been hidden within its walls? The crew had no idea, but one thing was certain: the journey ahead would change everything. The Aegis's legacy was far from over, and the galaxy was about to face a new chapter, one that no one could have foreseen. The reawakening. The journey into the unknown continued as the team, now several weeks away from the familiar territories of known space, neared the coordinates where the faint signal had originated. Tensions were high aboard the ship, with everyone fully aware that they were on the cusp of something monumental. Captain Joran's heart raced with each passing hour, his thoughts haunted by the Aegis's mysterious disappearance and its legend. Every passing day, he wondered if they would truly find the ship, and if they did, what they would uncover. They had already encountered several strange anomalies along the way: strange gravitational distortions, fluctuating energy readings, and cosmic radiation unlike anything they had seen before, but none of it deterred them. The signal had led them this far, and they couldn't afford to turn back now. It was more than just curiosity driving them. It was the belief that the fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. The team finally arrived at the location marked by the signal. It was a small, forgotten moon, orbiting a dying star in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. The moon itself was a desolate place, covered in thick clouds and constant electrical storms. It looked like a place that had been abandoned by time itself. But as they lowered their ship to the moon's surface, they saw something that took their breath away. There, partially hidden beneath layers of rock and debris, was the Aegis. The ship was larger than anything they had imagined. Its sleek, armored hull glowed faintly, as though the ship was still alive, pulsing with dormant energy. The ancient symbols that adorned its surface seemed to whisper to those who dared to approach, a language lost to time but still somehow understood. It was magnificent, its power undeniable, and its silence deafening. The crew disembarked cautiously, led by Captain Joran, whose hands trembled as he approached the ship's towering bulk. The air was thick with anticipation, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to hum with energy. The Aegis had been untouched for so long, but now it was ready to be awakened. "We found it," Captain Joran whispered to himself, more in disbelief than triumph. "After all these years, we found it." But even as they marveled at the sight of the ship, there was a growing sense of unease. The Aegis was not just a ship, it was a weapon, a tool of unimaginable power. And now it had been abandoned here, in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. The ship's original mission had been to protect the galaxy, but what would it become in the wrong hands? They moved closer to the ship, and Dr. Lyra, the ship's former engineer, took the lead. She had spent years studying the Aegis's design, even after it vanished, and she was the most familiar with its technology. Her fingers ran over the ship's cold surface, tracing the same lines she had once studied so many years ago. "This is it," she said, her voice full of awe. "The systems are still intact, but it's in a dormant state. The Aegis isn't dead, just asleep." The team quickly set up equipment to analyze the ship's condition. As the scans began, it was clear that the Aegis had been through some kind of catastrophic event. Its outer hull had been damaged, and several of its systems were offline. But what was more concerning was the core, the heart of the Aegis. It was still there, deep within the ship, pulsing with energy, but it was unstable. Dr. Lyra's face grew pale as the readings came in. "It's been damaged, too," she said, her voice shaking. "The heart, It could explode if we try to activate it without proper care. But if we can fix it, Captain Joran repeated, it could give us the power to protect the galaxy once again. But there was a catch. The Aegis was not just a ship, it was a force that could either save or destroy everything it touched. As the team worked to revive the systems and reactivate the ship, they were unaware that their presence had not gone unnoticed. Something was watching them from the shadows. In the distance, hidden by the thick clouds of the dying moon, a fleet of ships, dark, sleek, and powerful, watched closely. They had been waiting for this moment. The Aegis was too powerful to be allowed to reawaken, and they would do whatever it took to ensure that it stayed dormant forever. The tension among the team grew as they worked tirelessly to restore the ship. Each step forward brought them closer to unlocking the Aegis's secrets, but also closer to the danger that was quickly closing in. The decision was clear: reactivate the ship and risk unleashing something far beyond their control, or leave it dormant and never know the full potential of what it could become. Time was running out. The longer they waited, the closer the enemy fleet came. With a final, shaky breath, Dr. Lyra made her decision. The ship's systems powered up, the heart of the Aegis glowing brighter with every passing second. The Aegis was awakening, and the universe would never be the same again. But what would the ship's reawakening bring? Would it restore the power of the Empire and save the galaxy, or would it unleash chaos on an unimaginable scale? Only time would tell. But the first steps had been taken. The Aegis was no longer forgotten. It was about to become the galaxy's most dangerous weapon once again. Secrets within the ship. As the Aegis slowly powered back to life, its systems hummed with a soft, yet ominous energy. The faint glow that had once dimmed now grew brighter, illuminating the ship's corridors and halls that had been silent for centuries. The crew, wide-eyed and filled with both wonder and fear, began to explore the ship's depths, each step deeper into the vessel revealing something new, something hidden for ages. Captain Joran walked cautiously down the main hallway, his boots echoing on the metallic floors. The walls, once pristine and strong, had started to rust over the years, but there was still an undeniable presence to them. Something powerful, something ancient. The air, thick with dust and the scent of neglect, seemed to vibrate with energy. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Aegis was more than just a ship. It was alive, as though it had been waiting all this time to be awakened. Dr. Lyra led the group to the ship's core. "This is it," she said, her voice barely a whisper, almost as if speaking too loudly might disturb the ship's slumber. "The heart of the Aegis. It's been dormant, but the systems are coming online now. We need to be careful. We still don't fully understand its power." The heart of the Aegis was not just a core energy source. It was a mystery. The ancient technology it harnessed came from an era long before the Empire's rise to power, and it held unimaginable potential. Captain Joran recalled the days when the Aegis had been built, how it was rumored to hold the key to intergalactic peace or absolute destruction. It was a gift from a civilization lost to time, a power that could turn the tide of any conflict. But with such power came great responsibility, and the crew knew they could not take its activation lightly. The moment Dr. Lyra connected the final circuit and powered the heart, a surge of energy ran through the entire ship. The engines hummed with life, the lights flickered on, and a deep rumble seemed to shake the very core of the Aegis. The ship was alive, but it wasn't just the engines that had come to life. Something deeper, something hidden beneath the layers of technology, had awoken as well. A soft voice echoed through the ship, not one the crew could hear with their ears, but one that seemed to speak directly into their minds. "Welcome back." It was not a voice they recognized. It wasn't human. It wasn't alien. It was something else. The crew froze, exchanging nervous glances. Dr. Lyra's hands shook as she scanned the data. It's a form of artificial intelligence," she said, her voice trembling with shock. "But this is unlike anything I've ever encountered. It's as if the ship itself is aware of us." This isn't just a machine. It's a consciousness. Captain Joran's heart raced. He had always known the Aegis was powerful, but he hadn't expected it to be this alive. They moved forward cautiously, following the signals from the ship's central control room. The corridors seemed endless, twisting and turning like the inside of a massive living creature. The deeper they went, the more they uncovered. Strange symbols appeared on the walls, glowing faintly in the dim light. These symbols were unlike anything the crew had seen before. They looked ancient and yet familiar. It was as if the ship had been trying to communicate, but no one had ever been able to understand it before. When they finally reached the control room, the view was breathtaking. The vast chamber stretched out before them, with a massive circular console in the center. The control panels flickered to life as they approached, and the voice spoke again, this time louder, clearer. "I am the guardian of the Aegis. I was created to protect, to serve, and to end wars. I was abandoned when the galaxy could no longer understand the power I contained. But you are different. You seek knowledge, and perhaps you seek peace." The voice, now more distinct, sent chills down their spines. It seemed to resonate within their very bones, a presence they couldn't escape. "But be warned. The power within me is not a gift. It is a force that can either save or destroy everything it touches. And you must decide. Will you use it wisely, or will you become like those who came before?" The mysterious vanishing. The galaxy was once ruled by an empire, a force so powerful that no one dared to challenge it. For decades, the empire controlled countless worlds, its fleets of ships and armies of soldiers unmatched in strength. At the heart of this mighty empire was the Aegis, a ship so powerful it was called the Guardian of the Stars. Built from the strongest metals and fueled by ancient technology, the Aegis was feared by all. Its cannons could obliterate entire fleets, and its engines could travel faster than light, making it nearly invincible. The Aegis was more than just a ship. It was a symbol of the Empire's dominance, its strength, and its promise of peace. The crew aboard the Aegis was hand-picked, elite soldiers, scientists, and commanders who had all pledged their lives to protect the Empire and the people within it. Together, they became the most powerful team in the galaxy, keeping peace through their mere presence. But this peace came at a price, for the Aegis was not a vessel built for diplomacy. It was built for war. Then, one fateful day, the Aegis vanished. It was as though the ship had never existed. One moment, it was orbiting a planet in the outer reaches of the galaxy, and the next, it was gone. There was no warning, no distress signal, nothing. The Aegis simply disappeared. The galaxy's leaders tried to make sense of it, but no one had any answers. Not a single person aboard the Aegis was heard from again. It was as though the ship had been swallowed up by the universe itself. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some believed the Aegis had been destroyed in battle, its mighty cannons turned against it in some cataclysmic event. Others whispered that it had found a way to slip into another dimension, lost forever in a place beyond the reach of time and space. Some said it had been abandoned by its crew, who had grown disillusioned with the empire they served. But no one knew for sure. The empire, shaken by the loss of its most powerful weapon, tried to move on. But the Aegis was irreplaceable. There were many other ships in the fleet, each powerful in its own right, but none with the sheer firepower and influence of the Aegis. It was a ship of legend, and its disappearance left a hole in the heart of the empire. Without the Aegis, the galaxy seemed more fragile, more vulnerable. And as the years passed, the story of the Aegis faded into myth. The ship that had once been a symbol of peace and power became a legend whispered about in the dark corners of the galaxy. Children grew up hearing stories of the Aegis, and those stories spread across planets and star systems. It became the subject of songs and tales, told by those who remembered its glory days. Some believed the Aegis was still out there, waiting to return, but as time passed, fewer and fewer believed this was true. The ship became a forgotten relic, its legacy buried beneath the weight of history. But not everyone forgot. A small, secretive faction, operating in the shadows, kept searching. They believed that the Aegis had not been lost forever, but was hiding in plain sight, waiting to be found. They were a group of former soldiers, scientists, and engineers, all of whom had worked on the Aegis in one way or another. They had heard the whispers, seen the signs, and knew that the ship was out there, somewhere, waiting to be rediscovered. For years, they scoured the galaxy. They followed leads, investigated strange anomalies, and dug through old records in the hopes of finding a clue. The search seemed hopeless at times, but the faction never gave up. They believed in the Aegis, and they believed in its power. And they knew that if they could find it, the fate of the galaxy could be changed forever. One day, their perseverance paid off. A small, obscure signal was detected, coming from a remote corner of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of the Empire's influence. It was weak at first, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The faction jumped into action. They sent out ships to investigate, but none could reach the signal source. The area was too dangerous, too far out in the galaxy for anyone to navigate safely. But the faction was determined. They gathered a team of brave souls, each willing to risk everything for the chance to find the Aegis and uncover its secrets. The journey would be perilous, but they believed the ship was the key to saving the galaxy. They had no idea what awaited them, but they knew one thing. The Aegis was out there, and they were going to find it. As they set off into the unknown, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The crew didn't know it yet, but their journey would bring them face to face with the greatest weapon the universe had ever known. The Aegis had been forgotten by many, but it was about to make its return. And with it, a new chapter in the galaxy's history would begin. Dr. Lyra's eyes widened as she began to decode the ship's systems. This is incredible. The Aegis was never just a warship. It was a peacekeeper, a weapon designed to end conflict. The heart of the Aegis, this consciousness, it's not just part of the ship, it is the ship. It's been waiting for someone to unlock its potential. Captain Joran stood frozen, processing the enormity of what they had discovered. The ship was more than just a weapon. It was a guardian, a protector, with its own sense of purpose. It had been dormant for so long, hidden away, waiting for the right moment to awaken. And now that moment had come. But there was more. As Dr. Lyra continued to examine the data, something alarming appeared on the screens. The ship's internal systems had detected another presence. It wasn't just the cruise ship that had been watching them. It was something else. A dark, looming force, drawing closer with every passing second. "They're here," Dr. Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The enemy fleet is closing in. They know the Aegis is awake, and they're not going to let it remain in our hands." The voice of the ship responded, calm but urgent. "You have awakened me. You have unlocked my secrets. But now you must protect me. The enemies who seek to destroy me are coming. Will you stand and fight, or will you allow history to repeat itself?" Captain Joran turned to his crew, his mind made up. "We will fight. The Aegis will not be forgotten again. We will use its power, and we will protect the galaxy." The Aegis was awake, and its secrets were ready to be unleashed. The final battle for the galaxy had begun, and the crew now faced a choice: to wield the ship's ultimate power or let it slip into the hands of those who would destroy everything. The fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. And it all started here. The first encounter. As the Aegis hummed with life, its systems now fully restored, the crew realized they were no longer alone in the vast expanse of space. A faint but unmistakable signal had pinged on their radar. A fleet was approaching. Fast. Captain Joran's heart sank as the ship's sensors confirmed the presence of multiple ships closing in on them. The calm voice of the Aegis spoke again, a low, echoing tone. "Enemies detected. Hostile forces closing in. Prepare for engagement." The crew immediately went to their stations, adrenaline flooding their veins. Dr. Lara, standing beside the central control panel, looked at the incoming data with a mix of fear and excitement. "They're here. The Jira fleet has found us." Captain Joran's voice was steady but carried the weight of years of responsibility. "They're the same species that attacked us before, right? The ones we barely survived." Dr. Lara nodded. "Yes. The Jira are relentless, and their ships are like nothing we've ever encountered. If they have found us, they're here to destroy the Aegis once and for all. We need to act quickly." The warning lights flashed red as the enemy fleet came into full view on the main screen. A line of sleek, dark ships appeared from the shadows of deep space. The Jira ships, shaped like jagged, living creatures, pulsed with an eerie blue energy that sent chills down the crew's spines. Their technology was far superior, designed for one purpose: total annihilation. "They're closing in fast," Lieutenant Caro, one of the younger crew members, said nervously. "We're outnumbered. If we don't do something now, they'll destroy us before we even have a chance to fight back." Captain Joran's gaze hardened. "We may be outnumbered, but we have something they don't." He turned to Dr. Lara. "Can we activate the weapons?" Dr. Lara's fingers flew over the controls. "The weapons are online. But these Jira ships, they're too advanced. The Aegis is powerful, but we need more than firepower to win this fight." The voice of the ship spoke once more, cold and calculating. "The heart of the Aegis can deliver power beyond anything in your universe. But be warned, using it recklessly may cost you everything." Captain Joran took a deep breath. "We don't have time for second guesses. We'll use the power of the Aegis to stop them. But we need a plan." As the enemy ships neared, the crew scrambled to prepare. They knew they had one chance to use the Aegis's power before the Jira unleashed their devastating attack. Captain Joran ordered the crew to fire the first shots, hoping to delay the incoming fleet long enough to give them time to formulate a better strategy. The Aegis's weapons roared to life. A series of massive energy blasts shot out from its cannons, striking the Jira ships. The impact was immense. Ships exploded into balls of fire and debris. But the Jira fleet was relentless. The damage caused by the Aegis was significant, but their ships didn't falter. They kept coming, unyielding. "It's not enough," Dr. Lara shouted. "Their shields are too strong. We need to get closer. We have to use the heart." Captain Joran nodded, his mind racing. "Set a course directly toward their flagship. If we can get close enough, we might be able to overwhelm their shields and hit them with the full power of the heart." The ship rumbled as it began to accelerate toward the Jira flagship. The tension aboard the Aegis was palpable. The crew knew this was their only shot. The closer they got to the enemy flagship, the more intense the fire became. Enemy blasts slammed into the Aegis, shaking the entire ship. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and alarms screamed through the halls. "We're losing shields. Another direct hit, and we won't survive." Lieutenant Caro shouted as he worked furiously at his station. Captain Joran gritted his teeth. "We'll make it. Hold on." As the Aegis charged ahead, the massive flagship of the Jira loomed before them. It was a dark, menacing structure, its surface covered with jagged armor and pulsating energy conduits. The Jira were preparing for their final strike, and it seemed like they were on the verge of wiping out the Aegis completely. In that final moment, when it seemed as though all hope was lost, Captain Joran made the command. "Activate the heart. Full power." The Aegis trembled violently as the heart of the ship was triggered. A wave of energy, so bright and powerful it nearly blinded the crew, erupted from the ship's core. The energy shot through the air, a massive beam of raw force, and struck the Jira flagship head-on. The explosion was unimaginable. The flagship shattered, its advanced technology no match for the unrelenting power of the heart. The shockwave sent ripples through the battlefield, throwing the remaining Jira ships into disarray. Some exploded instantly, Others limped away, their ships crippled by the force of the blast. The enemy fleet was broken, their once unstoppable advance halted in an instant. But the cost was high. The Aegis had suffered significant damage. The ship's engines sputtered, and the ship itself seemed to groan under the weight of the energy it had just unleashed. "We did it," Lieutenant Caro gasped, barely able to believe it. "We stopped them." Captain Joran stood at the helm, staring out into the void. His expression was one of relief, but also of uncertainty. "For now, yes, but this is only the beginning. The Aegis has shown its power, but we've only scratched the surface. The Jura won't stop. They'll return with more ships. And there's still so much we don't understand about this ship." Dr. Lyra joined him, her face grim. "The heart. It's unstable. We've only got a limited amount of time before it becomes a danger to the ship itself." "We'll need to find a way to control it," Captain Joran said. "But for now, we've won a battle. Let's prepare for the next." The Aegis had survived its first encounter, but the crew knew this was just a brief respite in a much larger war. And as the enemy began to regroup in the distance, the crew of the Aegis prepared for the next challenge. The fight for the galaxy had only just begun. The ultimate weapon. The Aegis floated in the silent void of space, its hull battered and bruised from the brutal battle. The Jura fleet had been driven back, but the price of victory had been steep. The ship's systems were damaged, and its core, the heart of the Aegis, was unstable. Despite the temporary reprieve, Captain Joran knew they couldn't afford to rest. The enemy would return, and the Aegis's power, though immense, needed to be fully harnessed to face the dangers ahead. "We've got only a short window of time before the heart becomes too unstable to use," Dr. Lyra said, her voice tense as she examined the ship's systems. "If we don't stabilize it, we risk not only losing the Aegis, but also triggering a catastrophic event that could destroy everything in the vicinity." Captain Joran paced in front of the command center, looking out into the dark expanse of space. "Can we fix it?" he asked, his eyes locked on the flickering holographic displays. "I don't know," Dr. Lyra admitted. "The heart is unlike anything I've ever studied. It's beyond any known technology. It could take days, or longer, to figure out how to properly stabilize it. And we don't have that kind of time." "Then we need to make a choice," Captain Joran said firmly. "We either control the heart's power, or we risk losing everything. It's time to push the limits. We have to use it, before the Jura come back." The ship shuddered once more as another wave of enemy ships appeared on the radar, a growing armada closing in from all sides. The crew had no more time for indecision. The Jura were relentless, and they weren't giving up. "We need to prepare for another battle," Captain Joran said, turning to the crew. "Dr. Lyra, I trust you to make the decision. We've seen what the heart can do. If we use it again, it could wipe out the entire fleet, but we need to be sure it won't destroy us in the process." Dr. Lyra nodded, a heavy silence settling over her. She understood the stakes. The Aegis had never been just a ship. It was a weapon capable of immense destruction. But the heart's power was volatile, and its consequences were still unknown. However, there was no choice now. The Aegis was the last line of defense. "We don't have any other options," she said, her voice grim but determined. "I'll stabilize the heart, but we need to control the output. If we unleash too much power, the ship will be destroyed along with the Jura fleet." Captain Joran made the call. "Then do it. We can't afford to hold back." The crew worked together, their movements synchronized as they prepared the ship for what would come next. The Aegis was more than just a vessel. It was a weapon, and now it was time to use it. Dr. Lyra and her team of engineers began rerouting energy, stabilizing the heart's energy core, and preparing the systems for the blast. The Jura fleet closed in on them, their ships swirling through the stars like a storm. The Aegis had already shown its strength, but the enemy was regrouping, and this time they were determined to finish the job. A final warning flashed across the screens. Hostile fleet at 50% distance. Captain Joran's voice rang out, sharp and focused. Initiate full power. Engage the heart. The Aegis vibrated as the energy coursed through its core. A low hum grew louder, the sound of something ancient awakening. The heart was ready. The ship's systems roared to life, and the very air around them seemed to thrum with energy. The Aegis wasn't just a weapon anymore. It was a force of nature, capable of shifting the balance of the galaxy itself. Full power. Ready, Dr. Lyra reported, her hands moving swiftly over the controls. This is it. We're going to use everything the Aegis has. Without hesitation, Captain Joran commanded, fire. The release of energy was instantaneous. A blinding, searing beam shot out from the ship's core, piercing the dark expanse of space like a jagged sword of light. The force of the beam was so immense that it seemed to warp the fabric of space itself. The enemy ships, caught in the path of the energy blast, were obliterated in seconds. Entire fleets vanished into nothingness, torn apart by the raw force of the heart. The blast was so powerful that it continued to ripple through the galaxy, its energy waves expanding outward, destroying everything in its path. The Jura fleet was no more. The power of the Aegis was unmatched, but at what cost? The ship groaned under the strain. The walls shuddered, and the lights flickered as the energy drained from the core. Dr. Lyra looked at the readings, her face pale. It worked, but the heart, it's unstable. We've pushed it too far. The Aegis had won the battle, but it was clear the ship was barely holding together. The heart of the Aegis had unleashed its ultimate power, and now the crew had to deal with the consequences. We need to get out of here, Captain Joran said urgently. The heart is on the brink of collapse. If we don't leave now, we'll be caught in the explosion. The crew scrambled to evacuate the control room, moving swiftly to the emergency stations. As the Aegis slowly limped away from the remnants of the destroyed Jura fleet, the ship's internal systems began to fail. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the ship trembled violently. Captain Joran held onto the controls, his face grim as the Aegis pulled away from the destruction. We've made our choice, he said softly. The Aegis is a weapon, but it's more than that. We've just seen what it can do, what it can become. We need to figure out how to control it before it controls us. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The ultimate weapon had been unleashed, and its power was both a gift and a curse. The Aegis had saved them today, but its future, and the galaxy's future, was uncertain. And as the crew set their course to the unknown, they knew that their journey had only just begun. The galaxy was forever changed, and the Aegis was the key to whatever came next. The choice and consequences. The Aegis drifted in space, its massive frame battered and scarred from the recent battle. The heart of the ship had unleashed its devastating power, destroying the Jura fleet. But at a great cost. The ship was now teetering on the edge of destruction. The once dominant symbol of the Empire was now a wounded titan, held together by the crew's sheer will and the fragile hope that they could somehow restore it. Captain Joran stood at the helm, staring out into the cold void of space. The stars were distant, uncaring, as if the galaxy itself had moved on, indifferent to the chaos that had just unfolded. The Aegis had won them a battle, but its victory felt hollow. The heart, once a source of hope, now felt like a ticking time bomb. It had the power to save the galaxy, or destroy it. And the crew had no choice but to make a decision. We've crossed a line, Captain Joran said softly, breaking the heavy silence. The heart's power is unlike anything we've ever seen. If we continue to use it, it could give us the strength to fight off any threat. But it might also consume us. We can't afford to keep gambling with its power. Dr. Lyra stood beside him, her face pale from the toll the ship had taken. You're right. The heart was designed for a purpose we don't fully understand. It was meant to end wars, to bring peace. But it's also a weapon that we barely know how to control. Every time we use it, we risk the ship and ourselves falling apart. She glanced over at the control panels, where the energy readings were fluctuating dangerously. The heart was still unstable, and with each passing second, it seemed more likely that the ship might implode if they didn't act soon. "So, what do we do now?" Lieutenant Currow asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. "We can't just turn it off. We've seen what the Aegis can do, and now the Jura are gone. But how long until they come back? We need this ship, its power, to protect the galaxy." Captain Joran exhaled deeply. "The Aegis is too dangerous to keep operating like this. We can't control the heart forever. We either have to learn to master it, or we need to find a way to seal it away for good." Dr. Lyra's eyes narrowed in thought. "We can't just lock it away. The Aegis is the last line of defense for the galaxy. If we seal it away, we risk losing the only weapon that can stand against threats like the Jura. We could be leaving the galaxy defenseless." But Captain Joran's voice was firm, resolute. "The Aegis can't be the galaxy's savior forever. If we keep pushing its power, it will consume us all. We need a different way. We need to control it, not just use it." The silence that followed was deafening. The crew stood, each of them grappling with the enormity of the decision. The Aegis had already proven its potential. Its power could save countless lives, but it could also bring untold destruction. And the crew knew they couldn't afford to make another mistake. "We need to find a way to control the heart," Captain Joran said, his voice unwavering. "There's no turning back now. If we don't figure this out, we'll become the very thing we're fighting against, an unstoppable weapon. The Aegis must become a guardian again, not just a destroyer." Dr. Lyra nodded slowly, her resolve solidifying. "We have to unlock its true potential, its purpose, not just its power. It's a tool for peace, but only if we understand it." The crew set to work, beginning the most dangerous mission they had ever undertaken. They would attempt to tap into the deepest, most hidden systems of the Aegis, the ancient technology that had been dormant for so long. They would try to unlock the heart's true purpose and reforge it into something more than just a weapon. Days passed as they worked tirelessly, and the tension on the ship was palpable. Every step forward felt like a risk, but they couldn't stop now. Captain Joran, more determined than ever, led the team through each stage of the process. They reached the core systems of the ship, where the heart's energy was most concentrated, and began to interface with its deep neural networks. The ship began to respond, its systems activating in ways they hadn't seen before. The energy within the heart flared to life, and the ship's voice spoke once more, calm and collected. "You seek to control me, but control is not what I offer. I offer guidance. I offer protection, but only those worthy may wield my power. The choice is yours. Will you use me for peace or for war?" Captain Joran stood tall, his decision clear. "We will use you for peace. We will protect the galaxy, but we will never let you become a tool of destruction again." The heart's power surged once more, but this time it felt different. It felt controlled. The crew had done it. They had unlocked the true potential of the Aegis, not as a weapon, but as a guardian. With the heart now stabilized, the Aegis pulsed with a new energy. The crew had done what seemed impossible. They had reforged the ship into what it was always meant to be, a protector of the galaxy, a beacon of hope. The Jura were gone for now, but the galaxy was still fragile, still teetering on the edge of chaos. Captain Joran turned to his crew, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "The Aegis is no longer just a weapon. It's our guardian. And together, we'll make sure it stays that way." As the Aegis sailed into the unknown, the crew knew the battle was far from over. There would always be threats, always enemies seeking to bring chaos to the galaxy. But with the Aegis at their side, they were ready to face whatever came next. The choice had been made, and the consequences were clear. The Aegis had returned, and its true purpose had been realized. And the galaxy would never be the same again.